What do you have to lose? That was the statement President Trump made 16 months ago. He stated because he knew how dire the African American culture was, how dire the economic, the healthcare, the prison system that so many are accustomed to. But he knew he would promote, he would fund, he would help for-profit prisons. He knew that he would gut funding for halfway houses. He knew that he would take our budget, our trillions of dollars, the most prosperous country that has ever been created in civilization. He knew that the money would only go to the top. This income dichotomy, this polarization. I will talk over the next 20 minutes about the problems in our culture, the current inequality, and then I'll also put together a group of radical ideas for change. But these are not just ideas in the macro scheme of, oh, hey, let's go and improve, or hey, let's go in and try this. These are very specific legislative matters. These are actions. These are initiatives with budget. Our campaign, our administration, our movement fully recognizes that since the end of slavery in the United States, African Americans have endured a tumultuous period in a society that only recently gave the basics of human rights. But when you look at those human rights, we're talking about air, water, soil. We're talking about the ability to eat in a certain place, the ability to interact in a certain educational system. But what about the basics of life? What about being able to turn on water? What about being able to take a shower? What about being able to go to a school and learn? What about being able to have an opportunity of any type of upside economically? What about being able to have affordable health care? What about not being persecuted? Not being in fear? These are the things I care about. I've shown in many videos about the different steps we're going to take. But this, over the next 15 or 20 minutes, this is about the legislative action. This is about things that will happen. Affordable health care, home ownership, free lunches for children at risk. These are the latest things that are being attacked for all African Americans. African Americans have a lower chance of owning a home. And even when you do own a home, it's in an area that has little chance for appreciation. You have to realize that the American dream, it's only funneled in certain areas. If you ask somebody how they are able to give the next stage of life, how they're able to provide college for their children, how they're able to have some retirement, it's typically in a couple different buckets. And real estate is usually a third to half of Americans' dream. They buy a house, it appreciates over the next 20 years, it doubles. They have a very low mortgage. They're tight with their spending, right? But there is so much prejudice. There is so much hurdles that an African American has to overcome just to be able to get to that stage. Mass incarceration, a real issue. The overall national average of incarcerated citizens shows us a disproportionate number of black males who are serving longer sentences than white, Asian, or Hispanics. These are stats. This is the reality. Why is that? When slavery ended, incarceration levels went through the roof to control the African American man, to put him to work, to be able to offset those initiatives. There is a word that we talk about, cognitive dissonance. And that refers to a situation involving conflicting attitudes, beliefs, or behaviors. This produces a feeling of discomfort, leading to an alteration in one of the attitudes, beliefs, or behaviors to reduce the discomfort and restore balance. This is one of the many reasons why African Americans are serving longer sentences for the exact same crime. And those crimes, a lot of times, those are petty. They're adding up. They're in a situation where somebody doesn't have the basic means for a lawyer. Someone doesn't have the basic means to pay for a ticket. And many times it's easier for someone to plead guilty than to fight for their innocence. We've gone back hundreds of years in due process. If you look at the Bill of Rights, how many are under attack? I could argue the 13th, I could argue the 1st, I could argue many of them. Let's talk about some of the things we're going to do to change. Let's talk about some of the things that will happen in 2020. Number one, the administration, our movement, our administration will mandate non-lethal rounds for police and law enforcement. Why must a police officer put 6 rounds into a young boy? How is that possible? How much training does a police officer have with these weapons? How many other police officers are around them that have support? How much technology do they have? They know when and where you are based upon your cell phone. They know your background. They know your tendencies. I mean, this is a full-blown effort. Is it really necessary to take live rounds into someone's body? Why? How does that make sense? Number one change, right there. It's a no-brainer. Number two, let's talk about an economic stimulus plan. Okay? Let's talk about providing STEM. Let's talk about educational initiatives that enable someone to think logically and understand that the existing jobs in service, existing jobs in retail are under attack, existing jobs in transportation, healthcare, automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence are on their way. And there are a lot of greedy white men that want to have these jobs disappear. When we talk about minimum wage, and we talk about it's a win to be able to get minimum wage up from $8 to $15, how do you think those industries are going to deal with that? They're going to eliminate those jobs. I mean, you see it very basic in the Carl's Jr., the Burger Kings, McDonald's. You know, they have this whole phrase of your first job, right? But as soon as that minimum wage officially goes to $15 per different states, a lot of those jobs are being removed. Now you go through, you have this different terminal. They say, hey, I'd rather invest $15,000 for that terminal than be able to pay someone over and over again. It's a mathematical equation. We live in a capitalistic world. And if somebody doesn't have the means to be able to provide for their family, for their future, people get desperate. We are humans. We have to fight for survival. I don't blame a lot of these crimes. Some of these crimes are petty theft. Some of these crimes are simply trying to get a meal on the table. And other ones is a cultural pressure. It's a phenomenon. It's gangs. It's being forced into something at a very early age. The economic stimulus that we'll provide in a lot of these different regional centers, these areas, are all within America. We spend so much time and budget and effort in only the high-end affluent areas. This infrastructure plan that we're talking about, how much of that income, how much of those reserves are actually going to the lowest economic base? How much of those parts are going to South Chicago, Compton, different parts of deep LA? How many of those parts are going into, some really rough parts of New York? Any of that money going to Oakland? Any of that money going to deep Texas?